Joining us today. My name is Ken Susilo, and I have the privilege of kicking off the Stormwater track of the 2021 P3 Water Summit. Today we'll open with a panel on stormwater and community-based P3s, reflecting on the last 5 years, but sharing some insights of things to come. In 2014, a few Mid-Atlantic visionaries turned the Clean Water Act compliance into a holistic program to benefit both the environment and the community. We're lucky to have some of them here with us today. The community-based P3s was developed in collaboration with EPA Region 3 to bridge a gap between the public and private sectors to benefit local economic development by creating a marketplace for meaningful water quality impact. So with over $600 million in CBP3 programs over the last 5 years, questions are we meeting industry expectations? Has it become the phenomena we expected? What are some lessons that have learned? So again, my name is Ken Susilo. I'll be your moderator. I'm a senior principal with Geosyntec Consultants and manage our California Water Resources group. With us, and I'll go through the introductions of our distinguished panelists now. I'm starting with Dominique Lukenhoff, who serves as a Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Sustainability at Hugo New. Reporting to the Chair and CEO, she leads the company's global efforts in corporate sustainability, green business growth, health, safety, and environmental policy and related community sustainability initiatives, with an immediate focus on Kearney Point, the company's billion-dollar adaptive reuse of a 4 million square foot former federal shipmaking facility, being transformed to a holistic, natural, and built infrastructure model for the 21st century climate resiliency. Dominique also is a chair of the newly created community-based Public-Private Partnership Center for Water, Energy, and Equitable Economic Resilience, a center of excellence supporting innovative, high-performance partnerships housed under the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, and is an adjunct professor at Virginia Tech's Center for Leadership in Global Sustainability. Adam Ortiz is the director of Montgomery County's Department of Environmental Protection, a $140 million agency with 300 employees and contractors. The department oversees programs for watershed restoration, greenhouse gas reduction, renewable energy, sustainability, and environmental compliance. Prior to joining Montgomery County, Adam served as the Director of Environment of the Department of Environment for Prince George's County, Maryland, where he oversaw stormwater management, recycling, waste management, animal services, and sustainability programs. He served in the administration of Governor Martin O'Malley in 2007 to 2012, and prior to that served 3 terms as mayor of Evanston, Maryland. Kevin Schaefer serves as executive director of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, MMSD. And MMSD is a regional government agency that provides water reclamation and flood management services for about 1.1 million people in 28 communities in the greater Milwaukee area. Kevin has transformed MMSD into one of the leading wastewater utilities in the country through integration of green infrastructure with traditional infrastructure. And Kevin's 2035 vision has propelled MMSD forward with climate change adaptation through aggressive programs to convert to renewable fuels, install green infrastructure, and preserve floodplains. In 2012, MMSD won the U.S. Water Prize, and Kevin serves as a past president, or served as a past president of National Association of Clean Water Agencies, a past chair of the Water Research Foundation, and past chair of the U.S. Water Alliance. So, an incredible set of qualifications and visionaries joining us today. And for those of you who are just joining us, this panel just got started prior to us actually kicking off because we were so excited to see each other. We are actually privileged, the P3 Water Summit, to have these folks. And we'll have an opportunity to kind of listen to some conversations between them. But I wanted to start it off with a question. And maybe, Kevin, I'll start with you because you have a perspective where about 5 years ago, you didn't have a CBP3 in process, but you were building green infrastructure. And since then, you've started one. And so what are your thoughts? I mean, as you look back 5 years ago, where you were and then where you are now, what kind of observations and thoughts would you like to share?
Thank you, Ken. And it's such an honor to be on the same panel with Dominique and Adam. So hello, everyone. And again, Kevin Schaefer, Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. We started installing green infrastructure back in 2002. So we've been doing this for a long time. But when we installed it, it would be porous pavement here, a green roof there, a bioswale there. And so it was very sporadic, very diffuse implementation. We did complete a green infrastructure plan for the region that said you need to do more on private property and on public property. But we were trying to figure out how to flip that switch. How do we go from, sporadic small projects to something much larger? And as a public entity, we probably spent 4 years developing the RFP for our program. We called it the Fresh Coast Partnership Program, because we had to look at how we can basically take the tenets of a CBP3 approach, but really not have a CBP3, because we have to publicly bid our construction and so forth. So, a lot of work by my legal staff, a lot of work by procurement to just how do we procure this in a legal fashion based on our state laws. So a lot of preparation getting to the point where we actually implemented the first program. And that's about a little over a year. It was beginning of 2020 when we implemented that. And we put $20 million into the effort for the first effort. We'll call it phase 1 or phase 0.1. There's going to be a lot more coming. And put $20 million into it, hoping for gaining about 8.5 million gallons of green infrastructure at that time. What we've seen over that 15 months of work since it started is that there's more demand for this type of work than we have the money right now available for. So that 8.5, we actually have 12 million gallons of green infrastructure identified and ready to go. So we're putting together the paperwork to expand the program into the next year to look at how we can, garner all of this green infrastructure, because it ties directly with our mission for managing stormwater, wastewater, floodwater better. And, my other two panelists are the people we learned from. Adam was the one I first heard about this from at a conference where he was speaking. So I'm kind of the infant in this discussion, and Dominique and Adam are the parents that have moved this along so far and done a great job.
Well, let's go to Adam Ortiz, Director of Montgomery County. He may have been the first one you heard from, because he was one of the first one to do this from the county perspective when he was at Prince George's County. So Adam, I guess I'd ask you the same question, thinking about where you were 5 years ago, wearing a different hat and leading a whole new initiative. What was your thinking then, and what do you reflect upon now?
Thanks, Ken. And again, it's to echo Kevin, it's a pleasure to be on this panel with so many distinguished people and colleagues, and we're all in this together. Kevin suggests that Dominique and I are parents, but I really don't feel more mature than a teenager. And I think that's an apt metaphor. This is still a very young industry. We're sort of entering our adolescence. We're facing outrageous challenges and goals in a short period of time under the Clean Water Act, basically to reverse, and at least this is true in the Chesapeake Bay region on the East Coast, more than 400 years of degradation of our water infrastructure, from over farming to overdevelopment to industrialization, all the above stuff we're familiar with. So Ken, 5 years ago, we're a very progressive jurisdiction, like many in the DC metro area. So we didn't really shy away from the tougher regulations. EPA Region 3 set tough standards for us, resulting from lots of lawsuits and litigation with environmental groups like the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And others. The state of Maryland instituted tough requirements on us, not only to meet the goals, but to show that we had the financial means dedicated and the programming to do it. So, won't get into the politics of it all, but it was a big deal and had political consequences. But we embraced it. But we were like, shoot, this is a lot of work. How do we do this? We've never done anything like it before on the scale. So, per Kevin's comment, we knew that we were doing sort of piecemeal projects. Some of them were great, but really not at the pace or at the price point we needed to really make gains in clean water. So P3s we embraced, not because we love P3s, but rather we had a goal that we didn't think we could get to just using the traditional conventional government procurement mechanisms before. So we did take some chances. We had a lot of help. I don't want to suggest that that I'm responsible for it by myself at all. I embraced an idea, but we had technical assistance from EPA Region 3. We had great thought leaders from a variety of associations that we're all associated with. We had great staff that embraced it, and through the procurement process, had a great contractor who oversaw the P3. So I know we'll get into the weeds a little bit more, but but basically we tried a concept. It's not a new concept in the universe. It's just kind of new, in our little boutique industry here of water and stormwater. And 5 years later, we're like, wow, it actually kind of worked. The results speak for themselves. The proof is in the pudding. The Prince George's project, I just pulled it up. All the data points are available online in real time. And there's, of course, lots of things we can do differently, lots of things we can learn. And what happened in one corner of the world doesn't necessarily work in another corner of the world. But I think the general principles have been proven. We have proof of concept, Ken, and I think that's the biggest takeaway over the last 5 years.
Thanks, Adam. You've made a reference to Region 3, and I intentionally left out of my introduction for Dominique her role at Region 3, because one of the driving forces behind a lot of what we're talking about today is Dominique, who served as a senior advisor to EPA Region 3 administrator and was acting director of the Region 3 Water Division. So, Dominique, you have a lot of thoughts. You've been at this longer than 5 years, so please share with us kind of your perspectives.
Yeah, so maybe I'm actually the grandmother. I don't know. I'll go back 9 years. That sounds okay. I could go back longer because I do want to commend my colleagues here in terms of their leadership. They are disruptors in the right way, in terms of let's try to do it better, in the interest of continuous improvement. And sort of, I do want to acknowledge this whole sort of movement in green infrastructure, because I was involved very early on with a national EPA committee on, how do we create studies, show the cost benefits, look at places that are already doing it, work with them, enable it. And then we got to a point of, the procurement challenges, particularly when you're looking at thousands of BMPs like we saw in DC. That coupled with the total maximum daily load, the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, where I had lead for addressing urban stormwater, which was acknowledged by EPA at that time as one of the fastest growing adverse impacts to our water bodies, to our streams, et cetera. However, looking at stormwater, which has been that kind of stepchild in the water arena, and I might mention that I came from local government. So there's a huge connection that I've always made, particularly when you're juggling so much and understanding, the value of connecting with your citizenry and how you enable your community, and also, understanding that municipalities, local governments are paying the 98% cost of shouldering water infrastructure. However, stormwater really hasn't been there. SRF really has not invested. And there was no platform, right, through which to aggregate something like large-scale green infrastructure. So this is the mission that I sort of set out on, and I'll echo what Adam said. I had lots of help. We conducted global expert panels. What are barriers to large-scale green infrastructure, barriers to innovation? And what came out is you don't work with the private sector enough. And by the way, it wasn't about private money, although it evolved there. It was all kinds of expertise that you, government, we, at that time for me, really didn't work with private sector who's on the ground to understand how you get those efficiencies. So if we're going to build a large-scale program. So we were very fortunate, in that I had been just talking to Prince George's County, actually a little bit earlier, Adam, before, because everybody was screaming, I can't pay for this Bay TMDL implementation. Prince George's County had 15,000 acres. $1.3 billion, I can't do it. So we suggested let's enter into partnerships to figure it out. EPA, we reached out to the state water director. The idea was, if we're going to do this, let's provide support. Let's not, be ready to say you did something wrong. If something didn't work out, we were doing this together. So how can we enable success? And that's, I think that was a big part of, who goes first. And that's why I want to commend Adam and Kevin and others who have, because I guarantee you, I remember everyone watching Prince George's County. And they were not watching it for it to succeed. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is about human behavior. And Adam didn't make it easy on his own program. You involved churches. You did very non-traditional things. And I'll sort of stop with, did it fulfill? I certainly, but I'm always sort of on the track of how do we get it better, better, better? How do we get more communities involved? Because it's very place-based. So it looks different in every place because geomorphology is different. Community values are different. But we are seeing some common themes. Economic redevelopment by investing in water infrastructure and integrated water infrastructure and beyond, creating local jobs, which is what Prince George's County did, defining that with their partner. What are those key performance metrics? So in essence, creating an environmental management system that can now accommodate efficiencies in not only financing, but importantly, executing, and even more importantly for us coming from the GI world, to see the benefits of local jobs in O&M. And O&M equals asset management, equals compliance, equals now people see what they're investing in, as opposed to stormwater previously unseen, which is, it's harder to get people to invest, and improving their communities. And Moody's has now picked this up. I think we're on a wave now. I'll stop there, Ken.
Well, I wanted to pick up on something that you said, Dominique, and you were talking about Adam and Adam, what you were doing when you started. And I think you said Adam didn't make it easy because maybe, I'm paraphrasing, but the breadth and the scope of what you were trying to accomplish was pretty significant in the context of potential naysayers. And so you had some hurdles. You demonstrated success. It sounds like you continue to be supportive of the approach, but maybe Adam, you could share a little bit of your thoughts in terms of the context that Dominique set up, some of the challenges, maybe lessons learned that you would like to share with anybody who's kind of going to go down that path.
Yeah, so I would say there's I would describe them maybe as primary drivers and then contextual drivers in what we were trying to accomplish. The primary driver was, this mandate, 15,000 acres overall, short period of time and, limited funds. We had to institute our own dedicated fee on property owners, based on impervious acreage, not, the biggest, most celebrated political thing people have ever done. But still, we only had a limited amount of money. So it's like, how do we get this to go farther? And through aggregation and using the efficiencies of the private sector, stuff that everybody listening knows, we were able to bring the cost down from about $100,000 per acre to around $50,000 or $60,000 an acre. So we were able to have the budget driver. But all politics are local, and as we know, the environment is not an isolated phenomenon. The environment, interacts with our commerce, with our developed life, with our personal behaviors, with the way we build, the way we travel, with the economy. And in Prince George's at the time, the biggest local concern, political concern in the jurisdiction, we're sort of the underdog county of Washington, D.C. area. west side of Washington, D.C. is a wealthier, more jobs there. Prince George's, has just fewer businesses. So our tax base isn't as competitive. It's like that in every metro area. There's a little bit of an imbalance. So our biggest, political driver and public concern was, how do we shore up our economy? How do we create more businesses in Prince George's County so people aren't traveling across the metro area to go to work? It's a big drain on resources, on time with your families, and all these things. We want to, grow businesses in our backyard in this industry. So when Dominique says, we made it harder, is that, through our procurement, we required, to the extent we could by law, local business development and procurement from our partner, minority and disadvantaged business participation to the greatest possible extent, and also to work with all sectors of our community. Churches, for those of you who are familiar with fees, churches and nonprofits are like, hey, we're nonprofits, we shouldn't pay fees, for these stormwater things. We were like, well, I understand what you're saying, but you still have a huge parking lot. And if you don't pay for it, someone else is going to pay for it. We don't think that's fair. So, so we had this big debate with the churches, but in the end, we sort of had an agreement that we would, work with them we can get into the weeds another time, but that they were part of the family and part of the solution, and that we did projects that they were comfortable with, and that we gave them opportunities to mitigate their fees if they did certain behaviors. So, there's a question in the chat from Bruce Jacobson, what makes this community-based P3 is that, the sort of principles and the objectives were meeting community objectives. It wasn't just, meeting a bottom line. It's important to meet a bottom line. There's a lot of P3s on parking garages and parking meters, stuff like that. That's important. But with stuff as complex as stormwater infrastructure and green infrastructure, it's very much a social phenomena as well. So we wanted to have social gains as well. And long story short, we were able to meet about 80% local procurement, 80% a small and disadvantaged business procurement. So it was a big win. And for $100 million procurement, those are big numbers for local businesses.
And a quick follow-up for you, Adam. You talked a little bit about this engagement part and how you got the communities involved. Did they end up becoming supporters and advocates of your program? And is that, if so, is that a shift from how they did kind of consider the public works arm of the government?
Yes, by and large, we invested a lot of time. Some people call it pre-development, but we spent a lot of time at the churches. Part of it was because they were yelling at us. So we're like, all right, stop yelling. Let's meet. Let's talk. We, actually met. I think it was every other week for 2 or 3 months to sort of hammer out the agreement. We had similar meetings with car dealerships. Huge parking lots, so huge fees. We met with them as well. We met with shopping centers. We met with apartment building owners, and we're the public sector. So this is what our job is, to engage in the tough conversations with our public stakeholders. Private sector, they just kind of, take their business risk and do stuff. Sometimes the stakeholders are engaged, sometimes not. But as the public part of the P3, we spent a lot of time getting folks on board. And, it's just amazing what happens when you're sitting across a table from somebody, looking them in the eye and just saying, hey, man, I got this big regulatory responsibility. I'm trying to do the best I can. I know you don't like it, but this is where I'm coming from. Can you hear me? How can you help me meet the goal? Oh, okay, this is what you're concerned with. I understand your goals. Let's figure it out. And just by having those conversations, and we met with folks all over the political spectrum, all sorts of business interests, we did have a lot of support and champions for the program.
Thanks, Adam. Kevin Schaefer, a question for you. You talked about the process to get to a procurement, and now you're in the process of executing. Are you happy with the decisions that you've made in terms of direction? And can you share some thoughts in terms of how that's going and what you see coming down the horizon?
Yeah, no, we're very happy with the approach that we've taken so far, and it really ties back to what Adam was talking about. You cannot do green infrastructure in a vacuum. You really need to have the support of the community, the support of all the locations where you're going to build this infrastructure. So what I've seen with this community-based approach that we've used, from my side of the ledger, the important thing is we're getting all these social benefits, we're getting the water quality improvements, we're getting the stormwater reductions, but we're also sharing the risk of those projects with the private partner. In Milwaukee, we do not pay for a project until it is completely constructed and operational. So all that design work, all of that upfront outreach, planning, those are all built into it. So for us, we know when we purchase that green infrastructure that it's operational to the level that it was promised up front, as opposed to, doing it at the very beginning. So that's huge for us. But it also, this approach also fosters a grassroots approach to implementation. So you're bringing it up from the neighborhoods, you're bringing it up from the businesses, and it's not big government coming in and saying, oh, we're going to issue an RFP and you guys can apply for this and it'll be, something you'll love. So it really is grassroots, and it comes up to us. All we did was we identified the goals. We went to social measures that we're looking for, the number of gallons of green infrastructure that we're wanting, and then we build that all into that RFP. So it's been a huge learning curve, and my staff's phenomenal at this. I see one of the questions is about the importance of outreach. Outreach is probably the key element, and everything Adam talked about was outreach to churches, and it's the key element to this to work. If you don't have good outreach, there'll be huge distrust. Why are you coming on my property? All of this. So, it's very happy with the way it's gone, and it's that risk sharing though that's the key element for a utility.
So Dominique, you are now wearing a private sector hat. You had the regulator hat. You've kind of seen the whole sort of the spectrum of where parties can engage in this P3 process. As you think about, and I'm asking you to put on your national hat now, and thinking about where things are going in our industry, in the market of having public agencies needing to kind of develop and deliver infrastructure from different drivers. Can you share some thoughts as to where you think things are going from a national perspective? And then if you have any thoughts on what Adam and or Kevin were saying, I'd love to hear those as well.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to see both sides of it. You mentioned one of the properties that we have it from Hugo New, which is 130 acres, and we're evolving it. In fact, managing through lots of green infrastructure integrated along with renewable energy and next generation approaches that get us faster, greener, smarter, better, and how we connect with the community. And I will mention that I did name it. I actually named it community-based public-private partnerships, because I didn't really see, again, back to green infrastructure. Green infrastructure is all about grassroots, as Kevin has said and Adam has indicated, and recognizing that you get multiple environmental benefits, reduced urban heat island, for example. But the ability given sort of the landscaping maintenance scenario, that you can train and hire local people. So, the mentoring part of it, particularly that Prince George's County did, to actually enable and create more small businesses. And one of the other aspects is that, many communities and companies operating in communities were threatened. And what we said is, no, this actually is going to get you more work. You're probably going to get paid faster. And, and that has happened, actually. We're seeing that reinvestment in the community, and the community being able to put people to work who didn't have jobs. But I'll mention that, most land is privately owned. Stormwater and protecting our water resources is all about land use and development. So it's kind of interesting to be the developer on that side of it. We really have to look at these kinds of alternative approaches and how we get smarter about doing more. In fact, when you retrofit, studies have shown when you retrofit 2 or more infrastructure areas at the same time, you can align it like a street, like a green street. So when you're upgrading your street, you put in your bioretention, for example, or you address a stormwater, that it saves ratepayers 30 to 40% in money. So I think we have to continue to challenge ourselves And that's all of us. And I want to mention the importance of NGOs as well in this, because Adam, I know, the NGOs got involved in a lot of the work. And I think it's on all of us, public, private, and everybody involved in this, because we're in a new age in terms of climate disruption. Kevin's got a snowstorm out there. I grew up in hurricane season, but was never like it was that I remember if I wasn't drinking too many hurricanes. But drought on the West Coast and fire. We've all got to do some collaborative, creative problem solving, and we should question ourselves if we're doing anything the way we used to do it. So, did I answer your question?
Well, it was a great answer. I was wondering if you could speculate as to where the industry might going, maybe geographically. And I think there's a question for Kevin in that respect as well.
Yeah. So I will just mention that communities now are very aware in terms of the impacts due to climate. They're living it, right? So we, for example, at the center, barely sent out a very soft solicitation of who wants help in this arena. It doesn't hurt too that we've been able to document the 30 to 40% savings. And we had an overwhelming response from 100 communities, probably even more than that are from Hawaii to California to arid zones like Arizona, Nevada, the Midwest, North and Southwest, as well as Puerto Rico. So we're now we believe growing this community of practice, and that we're going to see more solutions. We're going to see more problems because we're all focused on it. And I think it's as we talk about the climate related industry, it's a huge industry. With the dollars that are being poured in right now, I saw an era in recovery where small communities just weren't ready. They weren't at the table. And that social and environmental justice was very much an integrated part for me in working with this, including sustainability. Sustainability, triple bottom line targets are part of the RP templates that we created. So I think, we're now seeing the holistic aspects of the problem and the need for those kind of smarter solutions. It's going to grow. And Moody's is already recognizing that.
And Ken, I'll just jump in because I see the question from Sanjeev, and it is going to grow. And what's driving that is this changing climate that we're all seeing. When we started GI, Green Infrastructure in 2002, it was all focused on stormwater runoff. But now these multiple benefits that Adam talked about and the changing climate that we're experiencing. I did just look out the window. It is still snowing in Milwaukee today, so I wish I was somewhere else. But we are seeing that changing climate. And the question on the Great Lakes, it's exploding on the Great Lakes. We're seeing more and more communities take on green infrastructure and looking at this CBP3 approach to do that. The Great Lakes Governors Association, which is all the governors around the Great Lakes, has created a Great Lakes Impact Investment Platform, which is a way to tie some of that private investment funding together with some of these projects. So I just see that as a springboard to take these type of approaches even further on the Great Lakes and nationally. And with all the infrastructure funding coming out, with the changing climate that we're experiencing, these are all drivers that are going to force people to look at more efficient, quicker ways to meet the same ends. And so I see it moving exponentially.
Thanks, Kevin. I wanted to take this opportunity. I've got more questions for you all, but I know that you all have perspectives and have things that you'd like to ask each other or engage in a dialogue. So I'll open it up to the panel to invite you all to ask questions of each other directly. Offer up any additional thoughts that you have. As I said, I've got other questions, but I wanted to give this an opportunity. Dominique.
Yeah, I did want to, highlight that where we are today, relevance is always important. And I mentioned environmental justice earlier. There is, for example, a CBP3 that I was directly involved in, but historically, when I worked on the Mid-Atlantic Environmental Justice Plan, had worked with this community. I mean, it's sort of the stepchild. Every imaginable adverse impact, urban blight, 6 times the poverty rate of the national average. Chester, PA, Chapter 47 bankrupt. So I took the model and actually tailored it a bit in terms of creating a partnership with the local water authority to underwrite the beginning of bringing in SRF money to get started, and then challenging that special purpose entity partnership to efficiently move faster to develop a stormwater utility. Through a CBP3, we developed a stormwater utility while actively planning and implementing integrated green infrastructure. In this case, it was cleaning up neighborhoods, making recreation parks accessible to that community, reducing urban heat island. And today, it's so there was no money. I was approached. Can EPA build this? I said, we don't do it, but I think I have a model that can be tailored. Be interesting to see if we could do it. We knew it would be hard. But so setting that metric is important. Having the right local leadership is important, such as you see here. So I started to look at what's really, really important as a limiting success factor. So we set, the 20% impervious, to translate that into green acres. And they created a $50 million program. I would tell you for their permit, they could have done it for maybe $500,000, $800,000. They wanted to reinvest in a resilient community that can become self-reliant, to reduce those disparate impacts and create some promise forward for that community. So they decided to do it by focusing on integrated green infrastructure and water quality. They had flooding so bad they turned the electricity off in parts of town. So they now have a $53 million program. They've created jobs, and the reinvestment to the city, it actually is in and around $150 million. What I'm saying is, if this blighted EJ community could do this because of the will, and because there were people that wanted to really help and really wanted to partner to make it happen, I think any community can do it. And that's sort of the message that I want to send out. And there's an increasing interest from that regard.
If I could pick up on that, Ken, I think we're now looking at the next generation of projects. And, I was talking about Prince George's, which is my last job, but my current job, as you can see right here, is, got the idea, Montgomery County, the county next door. So I'm really excited to be in Montgomery to kind of pick up, their program, which is a very mature program. So we're taking a lot of these concepts into our next phase of work. But as Dominique suggested, one of the frontiers is environmental justice. So we've done an intensive mapping exercise, and I'll spare people from me trying to clumsily share my screen, but we have equity maps that are available online, and we're going to be requiring our next percentage of our next portfolio projects to go into equity areas. And we've also done, and then I think this is another frontier, is intensive mapping, because we have decades of biological data on stream quality and watershed quality, to also target projects in places where they're most suitable for biological uplift. Some of the, our previous permits were a little clumsier. It's like, get as many acres as you can to meet the requirement, and that's important. But we know that, an acre of restoration here may be better than an acre of restoration there. So we want to focus on the places where it's going to matter. So we've also done intensive mapping on the locations where the projects are going to make a bigger difference because we have the data to do that. So all this is available online if you want to see where Montgomery County is. But I think like looking forward, Ken, like that's where we need to be. We need to be more surgical. We need to be more equitable and more accountable that the projects are making as much difference as environmentally as possible.
And there's a sort of a related question in the chat, because you talked about environmental justice and these other criteria. And the question had to do with multiple benefits and aggregating funding, but also pivoted to say, how do you prioritize? How do you take all of these factors and select your projects? I'm wondering if any of you have any thoughts on that process.
I can speak to that briefly, but I welcome the others as well. The great thing about sort of a portfolio approach, which is what P3s can enable, is that you're not doing one or two projects here or there, like Kevin said, on an ad hoc basis, but you're actually looking at, 20, 30, 50, 100 projects. And you can create a portfolio where some of them are very focused on water quality, some of them are more focused on community benefits, some of them are more focused on green space. But I think as we're moving through like project selection, these are all the potential feasible projects. These are the ones that, we can have access to property on. Of those, these are the ones that, are designed within a certain price point. By working with the public sector staff, and the private, you make those selections. So you do have projects that that cover as many of those bases as possible, and every one of them are evaluated. How many gallons per treatment is there? How much green space is created? How expensive is it? And you don't want a one size fits all. You want a lot of ingredients in your cupboard so you can make all sorts of different things. And that's what we want to do as well. It's a factor. It's not a factor in every single project, but it should be a factor in as many projects as you can do within your budget.
Kevin, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think Adam nailed it. I think everything that he said is really how we prioritize as well. I would build into that some of the outreach components, because once you build this green infrastructure, you want the neighborhood to adopt it so that it's part of their network, so that they will help maintain it in the future as well. We also are using a social vulnerability index, actually the CDC's SVI for Milwaukee County, to help prioritize our projects. And we've just started that this year. So we're trying to place these projects in those neighborhoods where you'll see the largest return of benefits on that investment.
I'll mention one more thing, or a couple of things. Transportation has been a big focus that I've had in this whole arena. Only because you can leverage money. Transportation transects all watersheds. All communities, their relationship with communities. And so green highways, green streets, and the fact that if you're looking at an array of green infrastructure projects, and you're looking for, social benefits, equity, as well as performance, roadways convey. So they can move water from one place to the other. They can also address a lot of water, on behalf of multiple communities. So that's an area. In fact, there are DOTs that have used the CBP3 approach. We're talking to more now, and I think DOTs are realizing the importance of demonstrating value, delivering not just roads, but delivering value to improve community livability. So I think that, they take up 25-30% of your land use. So I just see that also as an area, particularly as we look at greenhouse gas, what are the major contributors, and then being able to work more creatively, for those types of improvements.
Well, it seems like we're just getting started with our conversation, but we're out of time. And
what?
So I wanted to
I have so much more.
Dominique Lukenhoff, Adam Ortiz, Kevin Schaefer. Thank you all so much for joining us, kicking off the Stormwater Track for 2021 P3 Water Summit.
Adam talked too much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.